Last month, the leading authority on official tier list making, Lumirank, published a third tier list of Smash Ultimate. The methodology was mostly the same as before. They polled as many top players as they possibly could and asked them to form their own personal list before then aggregating the data to form what would be the average placement of every character. Without fail, every single tier list would be met with controversy and disagreement. A large portion was expectedly from players who were biased for or against certain fighters, but even top-level players raised an eyebrow over where characters ended up. Naturally, the concept of a tier list is highly subjective, as players have a tendency to look at things not within a pragmatic scope, but more of an experiential one. While the choice of top 5 through 10 cast members have more or less become a foregone conclusion, where I've seen the most disagreement was past top 10, with opinions varying wildly between different players. Despite making my own tier lists on this channel, I wanted to make a video discussing the Smash community's handling of such a system in a way that inaccurately portrays a character's true strength and capability. So for today, we'll be looking into the problem with Smash Ultimate's tier lists and why they're extremely unreliable. Ironically, this in and of itself can be written off as nothing more than a biased opinion. So let me establish a bit of background context. Does this apply to all types of tier lists in all competitive games? No, I'm specifically referring to the way the Smash community makes a tier list. As a comparison, League of Legends is another game I play often, serving as a basis for Vars 1. The game is known to have multiple continuously updating algorithmic platforms that make up a champion's overall performance. U.GG, OP.GG, Lolalytics to name a few. Across every patch, these websites analyze millions of games to determine which champions have the best performance relative to pick rate, ban rate, win rate, and a variety of other factors. While they can still be misleading in more ways than one, what makes these a reliable point of reference is due to the usage of data. Again, millions of games are sampled every single week, so when a champion comes out to have a 52% win rate and a pick rate of say 10%, logic dictates that would make them a very high performing character. Even the lead balancing team at Riot Games relies on these sources to determine who gets buffed or nerfed every patch. Smash Ultimate by comparison takes a much more informal, unrefined approach to making a tier list. While they do undergo the same process of collecting data from as many players as possible, the problem lies in the reliability of that data. In the main Luminosity article for the third tier list, they noted that one person, for reasons known only to the Almighty, placed King DDD in the top 5, which on its own raises doubts over the legitimacy of these things. Prevailing wisdom already understands that tier lists are never meant to be taken at face value, instead merely to serve as a reference point for the relative strength of a character. But even then, I'd argue such methodology wouldn't even be passable either. For a tier list to be truly accurate, it must assume an exact level playing field between characters, operated by players at the same skill level and playing at the same level of mastery. Empirically, this can never happen for the simple fact that we will never have a large enough sample size to rule out edge cases. Calling back to League for a moment, even though skill and mastery disparities are present in that game, such outliers can be measured out through, once again, the vastly higher number of games played each and every week. A 75% win rate on a champion in only 20 games can be ruled out as a lucky streak, but if it's a 75% win rate in 2 million games, then it would and should be taken more seriously. For starters, it's clear that even amongst top players, skill levels vastly differ. Despite Ultimate being more competitive than ever, there's often a clear gap between say rank 1 through 25 versus rank 26 through 50 and then even 51 through 75 and so on. The issue with the central tier list is that it attempts to include all subdivisions of skill from your best player in the world all the way to the handful of O2ers at every local. Even more pressing is that Lumirank mostly tries to collect data from exclusively high and top level players. Not a bad thing, mind you. Practically speaking, the opinions of a global ranked player carry more equity than Little Timmy on Elite Smash, but even that can lead to biases. Depending on what scene you're in, there could be a world of difference between say your rank 1 through 3 PR versus a rank 10 to 15 PR. Tier lists and other competitive games typically segregate data based on ranks. Essentially, they would have a Smash equivalent of a tier list for O2ers, a tier list for 2-2ers, 4-2ers, top 64 at 500 person majors, top 32, top 8, etc. Skill brackets are important when discussing character viability and performance, making it simply unfeasible for us to have a single governing tier list. Oftentimes you hear discourse over whether a character is truly just that good or if it has more to do with the player's own talent and skill, which can artificially skew our perceptions of a cast member's actual performance. The running point of contention when determining a character's position on the tier list is whether we should consider their ceiling or their floor to be where they truly stand. Most other PvP titles choose the latter. Over in League, for example, we can have the top 5 junglers in the North American server all have a 70% win rate on Hecarim, but in no way does that necessarily mean he's the best champion for jungle, because the total performance across the however many millions of games might be only like 50.5%. The Smash community has a habit of doing the opposite, placing more value over the farthest the character can reach instead of where they stand, which tends to be why there's so much volatility in opinions and character placements. You'll find this on both ends of the spectrum. At the top end, we have characters like Fox, Pikachu, and Cloud, who have consistently stayed at or around high in top tier, despite being piloted by mostly one single player. There might be another strong rep of each, but again, it calls into question if it's just that one person or if the character really is that good on paper. Pikachu in particular was a notorious example of that. Once believed to be the #1 character in Ultimate, he went as low as 17. Now I know a meme on this channel is that I like to unapologetically downplay Cloud for being overrated. And while it's mostly for the memes, a lot of it comes from my thought process that if Spargo were to suddenly retire for a year, Cloud would easily drop down to mid tier. Likewise, if Light or Shiny Mark or Leo were to drop their respective mains, I wouldn't be surprised if Fox, Pikachu, and Joker got knocked down a bunch. Following the same thought process of a character's tier list placement being based on top-level performance, arguably the best case study of this would be Toriguri. Banjo's been widely considered the weakest DLC character that isn't Piranha Plant, owing to not really excelling in any particular field, and yet we have Toriguri, who's been able to consistently place around top 16 to top 32 at P-tier events. Seeing as these tourneys feature the best of the best, Banjo should be a high-tier character. But that doesn't make a lot of sense either, does it? How many times throughout Ultimate's competitive history have we seen a character shoot up or down the tier list purely by the actions of one or even two players? Far more than we can count, but for my money it would only be appropriate for someone to jump that high if there were at least 3 or 4. I actually want to point to Falco for this. There were 4 different Falco players in the top 50 at one point or another in the post-pandemic metagame. And most famously, I don't remember which event specifically, maybe it was Sumabato or Maisuma, but Mosunabe, Masa, and Arikusu were seated right next to each other. 3 Falco players, all seeded to make I think 13th place. Then of course we have Tilde in the West. At 4 players, I think Falco's placement of rank 26 isn't too unreasonable. We have a big enough sample size to draw a more consistent average. Probably an example of a character rated unexpectedly low is Mark. We may never find out where Mark truly stands in Ultimate, whether he's actually deserving of being the 12th worst character in the game, or if he's more of a mid-tier or even high-tier character. A lot of that has to do with the fact that quite literally no one plays him. He has the lowest representation at high and top level out of any character, even lower than Ganondorf, believe it or not. Granted, it's not really Smash Ultimate's fault that we don't have a big sample size. There simply just isn't a big enough player base willing to travel to and compete at these big events for us to collect an adequate number of results, but all the more reason why tier lists should only be taken with a grain of salt. That a character can jump 20 placements in the span of half a year by the actions of 1 or 2 players, or conversely drop 20 placements by the inaction of 1 or 2 players, makes the whole ranking process extremely inconsistent. On that note, emphasizing the danger of placing significance on only a single individual is that public perception of a character becomes contingent on how hot they're running in that specific season. For a character like Rob or Steve or Kazuya, it wouldn't make much of a difference if one person's been having a down year since we have multiple top players for each one. Not saying we can't make use of recency bias, even a game that doesn't get new balance patches like Ultimate should have their tier list updated as often as possible, but it does become distracting to see a character rated so highly in a tier list purely for a streak of good performances, and then the very next season the player becomes inconsistent and the character goes right back down. If that's the case, why even move them up the tier list at all? Even if it's multiple players running hot on a character at that point, so much can take place to render those placements a circumstantial thing. Bracket paths can make or break a person's run. In fairness, Mickey Mouse brackets don't happen that much, but it doesn't change the fact that certain players, and by extension their characters, are able to counter other players and their characters more easily. People in the comments might go, lol, just win skill issue, and as much as it burns my tongue to admit it, yes, everyone should just get good. But can you blame a Samus player for underperforming if they have to face Olimar, Fox, Duck Hunt, and Bayo? Bracket demons are a thing as well. While this in no way invalidates the impressive career he's had thus far, back in SmashCon 2023 I was watching Spargo's set against Aaron, and I actually happened to be standing right next to Aquila. At the end of the set, I jokingly asked him if he was happy that Spargo was eliminated so early, and he told me it was a massive relief, considering at the time Spargo made it almost impossible for Aquila to win if they were both in top 8 prior to Kowloon. Even the once best player in the world was hoping that he wouldn't have to fight a certain player. Even a difference of one singular opponent can determine if you make it to top 8 at a major or wash out at 33rd, further placing importance on a character's average performance. An example of a character with a strong average performance despite unusually low peaks would be Aegis. Ever since Cosmos won Glitch Infinite in early 2022, I don't think there's been a single major won by a solo Aegis player. However, they are currently piloted by Aquila, Spargo, Shuton, occasionally Leo, and Snow, 5 top 20 players. I think their ranking of number 6 in the recent tier list is pretty accurate because they have a strong average performance. Suppose just having mentioned the number order, I also think a proper tier list should not be ordered, especially for a roster as big as Smash. Even though the tier list has grading categories from S to E tier, because they've publicly stated they were ordered, players go ballistic when they see X character being above or below Y. Yes, most of these comments come from a place of salt, but generally speaking, it can make things extremely divisive for no beneficial purpose. I'm not entirely certain whether they institute a hard cap on the number of characters that can be in a certain tier, or if it's based on a score cutoff, but it's weird how A+ tier has like 8 spots, while A tier is only 6 and A- tier has 10. Why not just 8 across the board? For that matter, purely from a visual perspective, it overinflates the difference between character strength. Mario and Pikachu are only 0.4 units apart from each other in score, and yet it's enough to put Mario squarely in high tier while Pikachu is in top tier. There are some merits to having actual order instead of just every character being in X tier or Y tier, because ultimately yes, characters are graded on a spectrum. The notion of Ness being in the same bracket as Donkey Kong sounds completely asinine until you realize the score values are 0.7 units apart from each other, equivalent to Mario vs Joker or Peach and Daisy for example. People might raise an eyebrow at Toon Link being a full subcategory over Young Link, but then you look at their score rating to find out they're only a quarter of a unit apart. So it's not entirely unwelcome to have a tier list in hard order, but a major downside to it is that it sets a precedent for a character to either be better or worse than other characters, black or white. Outside of a few exceptions, I feel like characters belonging to a tier category are all in the same relative strength to one another. Like, I don't consider Cloud or Roy to be stronger over each other, they each have their own strengths and weaknesses, yet the tier list paints the image of Roy being better than Cloud. The spot where I see this the most would definitely be high and mid tier. Even though A- is still technically considered high tier, it feels weird for Greninja, Pac-Man, Pokemon Trainer, and Terry to be as low as they are. Another one would be Wolf. Everyone made a fuss about how Wolf became the lowest rated species for the first time when personally I think Falco and Wolf are equal to each other. The tier list placement however has you believing he's numerically worse. So many characters are possible grounds for high tier in Smash Ultimate, but due to the nature of ordering, you can also see this a lot in low and mid tier. King K. Rool had some of the best placements of his career through Brujo and Boru, and yet he's still bottom 5 when in reality I feel like he's warranting of upper C tier. At the same time, moving him up also means moving other characters down. There's no way in hell characters like Ike, Bowser Jr. and Bowser are rated as low as they are, yet it's hard to make a convincing argument to move them up since everyone else above them is equally deserving of their spot if not higher as well. In an ordered tier list, there will be a defined best character and defined worst character. From then on, the range is established between top and low tier, but when you think of low tier characters, you automatically assume unviable, right? And yet time after time we've seen one tricks of these so-called low tiers pull through in big ways. I'm not denying that a number of cast members are objectively unviable, but a tier list having a zero-sum ranking makes a lot of characters look way worse than they actually are. Taking empirical data into account, it would make a lot more sense for mid-tier to be the largest category, and yet ironically it's the smallest. Anyway, I'm not saying we shouldn't have a central tier list, if nothing else it makes for a fun discussion, but I do believe the way they're implemented and portrayed has a detrimental effect on player perception towards that character. I understand that for a game like Smash, there's no real alternative to consider, given we don't have the ability to compile a sample size in the millions the way other games do for a more truly accurate result. But improvements can and should be made to the current system, especially for if and when the next Smash game comes out, we can transfer it over to there as well. But what do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree with my stance on this? Feel free to share in the comments. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at VarsFam, join my Discord server, and check out my other Smash Ultimate discussions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Goes for an over-aggressive forward, like, nah man, dash attack, up smash, getting him out of there.
And he thought that he was going to be safe by going retreating back to ledge, but this time Light knows that he does a quick dash up. I'm faster than you.
Oh my god. Landing up air into another forwarder coming out 60, 70%, racking on even more. Thanks Spargo all the way off stage. Cannon normal get up once more. Spargo seeing so, with that normal get up once more, limit online. Needs to find anything here to get back into this game. Okay. Turning up finally with the movement of this limit. Who's going to stop here? Maybe. Letting it back.
Oh, no way. Finishing touch is not going to finish anybody except for yourself. Light will be one taking it in 3-1 over...